In this tutorial, I'll show you how to create this node network that will render two scenes to produce a single video file. I don't recommend this as a method for rendering multiple scenes, but it is a good example for an introduction to compositing. To set up the first simple scene, I'm going to rename it Scene 1 Cube. I'm going to change the view to the camera view, numpad 0. I'm going to go to frame 1, make change. I'm going to drag on the tip of the green arrow and insert keyframe. Go to the object properties of the cube, right click on the Y location, insert single keyframe. I'm going to set the total length of the animation to 10 frames. I'm going to go to frame 10, make change, drag on the tip of the green arrow, right click on the Y location to insert single keyframe, rewind and play. To set up the next simple scene, click the Add Scene button, select Full Copy and rename the new scene Scene Sphere and change the number to 2. With the cube selected, press delete and add mesh UV sphere. Now if we want to add the frames from the previous scene to the frames from this scene, we must start this scene at frame 11. The previous scene finishes at frame 10, and I'm going to go on to frame 20, and if we press rewind we go to frame 11. Drag on the tip of the blue arrow to move the sphere up. Right click on the Z location and insert single keyframe. Go to frame 20, drag on the tip of the blue arrow to move the sphere down. Right click on the Z location, insert single keyframe, rewind and play. Change the layout from default to compositing. Click the Use Nodes tick box. We get two nodes, a render layers node which is an input node linked to scene 1, and a composite node which is an output node which gives the final output from the network. In the render settings, if I scroll down and change the file format to a movie file format AVI codec, and I'll reduce the frame size to quarter size 25% and click the animation button, Blender renders each frame from scene 1 and sends the frames to the composite node where they are saved as an AVI file. How can we add the frames from scene 1 to the frames from scene 2? I'm dragging to make the window bigger. I'm going to drag the input node to the left and the composite node to the right, and dragging here disconnects them. In the Add menu, in the Input section, I need another Render Layers node, and I need to link that node to Scene 2. Now to add the frames from both scenes, in the Color section we need a Mix node, and that has two inputs, so we can connect our frames from Scene 1 and our frames from scene 2, and that will mix them together and we can connect the output to the composite node. The mix node takes a base image threaded through the top socket and mixes it with a second image threaded through the bottom socket. The factor is the amount of use of the second image. A factor of 0 is no use, a factor of 1 is full use. I'm going to set the end frame to frame 20. Now from frames 1 to 10 I want the factor to be 0 so that the frames come only from scene 1, and at frame 11 onwards I want the factor to be 1 so that we make full use of the frames from scene 2. To vary the factor over time we add a time node. In the Add menu, Input Time. For some reason that's added off screen. I drag that up, make it a bit wider, Now, at the moment, it starts at frame 1 with a value of 0 and gradually increases the factor till it gets to frame 250 when the factor will be 1. If I change the start frame to 10 and the end frame to 11, then before frame 10 the factor will be 0, at frame 10 it'll be 0, at frame 11 it'll be 1, and from then on it'll be 1. Click the animation button to start the rendering. Blender appears to render the first frame from scene 2 even though the frames aren't used up to frame 10, and then when we get to frame 11 Blender appears to render the last frame from scene 1 even though those frames aren't used. When the rendering is finished, go to the folder where the output is stored and play the video file. You should see scene 1 followed by scene 2. Next, I'm going to open a file that has 3 scenes. Because the mix node only has 2 inputs, to render 3 scenes we need 2 mix nodes and 2 time nodes. If I change the layout to default and look at scene 3, it has to start even further down the timeline at frame 21. Changing the layout back to compositing. In the render properties, the end frame has to be set to 30, and in the second time node the switch between the factor being 0 and going to 1 takes place at frames 20 and 21. That's the end of the tutorial. I'll put the files for you to look at my website www.freemovies.co.uk at the Blender channel there. Thanks for watching and goodbye.